Hello everyone and welcome to this video brought to you by the Applied Research Collaboration Kent, Surrey and Sussex. My name's Melanie Rees-Roberts and I am one of the Research Programme Managers for the ARC, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about research governance and ethics, giving you an introduction to the topic. In this video we will cover three main areas. Firstly, what is research governance, and give you a background of what it is and what it means and where it came from. Secondly, we're going to talk a little bit about the approvals you might need for your research project. And thirdly, we're going to talk about what happens when you have those approvals and talk a little bit about the local permissions you might need before you start your project. So what is research governance? Research governance really found its origins after the Declaration of Helsinki, which was created in 1964 by the World Medical Association. The Declaration of Helsinki sets out ethical principles for human experimentation, and it was created to deal with some of the growing concern of unethical practices, which became more apparent during and after World War II. Since the Declaration of Helsinki, many international governments have introduced legislation into their law to protect individuals. It's very much about protecting the safety and rights of the participants and ensuring robust research that is fit for purpose. On this slide, I've given you examples of just a few of the many acts that consider research and the ethical principles that need to be followed. If you are unsure where to start, a good place to go is to look at the UK policy framework for health and social care research. There is a short video on the Health Research Authority website, which you can link to through these slides. And this policy applies to all health and social care research involving patients, service users, or their relatives and carers. And the policy really sets out 15 principles of good practice in how you should do your health and social care research in the UK. It acts as a fantastic blueprint to make sure that you are following ethical principles and conducting your research reliably and with the participants in mind. A link to the full policy can be found at the bottom of this slide. So when it comes to actual approvals, what approvals do I need? And when I'm talking about approvals, I'm talking specifically about ethical approval for your research project. And whether you require this or not is determined by both your project and who your participants are. But before you get to that stage, you need to think about whether your project is research. So ask yourself, is it research that I'm doing? Does my project ask questions to find out new knowledge? Will my findings be generalisable? And does my project involve collecting data that is on top of routine care? It's additional to that. And does it involve randomisation, although there will be lots of studies that don't require randomisation but will require ethical approval? A good place to check whether your project is research is to use the Health Research Authority decision tool and follow the link. If it's not research, then it might be clinical audit, for example, or it might be service evaluation. And although you might not require an ethical panel to approve your project, it is critical that you think about the ethical risks and considerations for your audit or for your service evaluation. If you are still unsure about whether your project is research or not research, or whether you should require ethical approval, we recommend that you contact the research department within your organisation. It's important to do this because it will not only allow you to register your project with your organisation, but will allow you to ensure you have the correct indemnity cover for your project and that you are ensuring that you have all the appropriate approvals. So the first thing to consider is whether you require Health Research Authority and or NHS Research Ethics Committee approval for your project now that you have established that it is research. The first thing you need to consider is who your participants are. This very much determines whether you need HRA and REC approval. So if your project involves research participants because of their past or present use of NHS and adult social care, including participants recruited through these services as healthy controls, then you will require HRA and REC approval. In addition, patients who are cared for in private and voluntary sector nursing homes and or residents of residential care homes, you are highly likely to require this type of approval. You may also be involving research participants because of their status as relatives or carers of past or present users of these services. These types of projects will also require HRA and REC approval. You also need to consider this level of approval if you include people who lack the capacity to give informed consent to take part in the research, if you are processing confidential patient information without consent, and if you are using material consisting of or including human cells. If your project involves NHS or adult social care staff, you still require approval. However, you will only require the Health Research Authority approval element and not full Research Ethics Committee approval. The second thing to consider is, what does your project involve? As there are some types of project that mean that you will automatically require these types of approvals. Firstly, if you're intending to expose participants to ionizing radiation, for example, PET scanning, X-rays, or other types of diagnostic assessments. Are you considering a medical device that's not CE marked or in experimentation? Is your study an investigational medicinal drug or product? Are you a practicing midwife conducting a clinical trial? Are you including information protected under the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority Register? And are you collecting tissue of any kind? All of these types of interventions or studies involving these types of things will require full HRA and ethics approval. In addition to this, health-related NHS research involving prisoners and social care research projects funded by the Department of Health will all require Health Research Authority and NHS Research Ethics Committee approval. You can apply for this type of approval through the IRAS form, or the Integrated Research Application System, and there's a link to the system on this page, and it has lots of guidance on how to complete your application. If you want to understand what ethics committees consider and the governance arrangements around their constitution and their conduct, then you can follow the link at the bottom for the regulation guidance. If you have ascertained that your project does not fit the criteria that we've just discussed for the Health Research Authority and the NHS Research Ethics Committee, you may now be unsure of where to go and what approvals you need. The best advice in this case is to contact your organisation's research department. Not only will this allow you to register your project with your organisation and ensure there is appropriate indemnity arrangements in place, but they will give you advice on whether you could now consider ethical approval from a university ethics committee. Universities have their own ethics committees that can give approval on projects and research studies that do not fit the criteria we've already discussed. They conduct a similar assessment to a research ethics committee and have the same robust procedures for assessing ethical risks and the conduct of studies. Therefore, if you work for a university, contact the department that organises the university's research ethics committee. If you do not work in a university, contact your organisation's research department, as there may be arrangements in place to use a local university for this purpose. If your project involves local authorities and is social care related, you may have to also consider an application to the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services. This is only for projects that are seeking to involve 4 or more social services departments. So that's 4 or more local authorities, including district councils. This assessment assesses the proposal to ensure that the potential benefits outweigh the time and effort involved for the local authorities, and that the topic best reflects main current and future concerns of the service, so that it is fit for purpose. If you require this, you need to complete a form and submit by email along with some supporting documentation. There may be fees that need to be paid to cover this approval. And just to note also that some local authorities have extended the Adult Research Governance Framework, the UK policy that I mentioned, to children's social care. So it's best to discuss with the local authorities that you intend to conduct your research with about their own governance arrangements. You may still be unsure about what you need to do. So our best advice is that you do contact your organisation's research department. They are the best people to give you the advice on what approvals you might need. If you don't have a research department in your organisation, do feel free to contact us at ARC KSS and we will do our best to advise you on the best route forward for your particular project. So what happens when I have approval? So you will have an approval in the form of letters, either from the HRA or the Ethics Committee or both, or from a university if you didn't require the Health Research Authority approvals. Once you've got these approvals, it's best that you seek your local permissions. So this is checking with the organisations within which you intend to recruit your participants or conduct your study to ensure that they can support you and that they can give you the appropriate access to participants, to data, or whatever it is you're required for your project. For the NHS, this is called the Local Capacity and Capability Assessment. It's a smaller set of checks, as the HRA approval has removed some of the higher level global checks around your project. To get this local assessment, you need to send your project document pack, so that's the protocol, documents for participants and your ethical approvals to the relevant research and development department. They will then assess whether as a trust or an NHS provider, they have the capacity to support your project, and they will grant you permission for the study to go ahead. So contact your local R&D department in the trusts that you hope to run the study, or if you are unsure who to contact, the Kent, Surrey and Sussex Clinical Research Network may be able to give you support, and this link gives you an email to contact them. Another consideration, particularly for NHS organisations, is to think about whether you need a research passport. If you are non-NHS staff and you need access to go on site into NHS or service provider organisations, or to deal with participants or data, then you will need a research passport so that they can ensure you have the appropriate pre-engagement checks that maintains the safety of the patients and the participants. The research passport is a document that shows the organisation that's supporting your research what checks you have had as an employee of an organisation outside of their own. And the best place to start is to refer to the HR Good Practice Resource Pack. And this gives you all the information about how you go about getting a research passport, whether you will need a criminal records check, and what level of check you will need to conduct your research in that NHS provider organisation. For non-NHS organisations or other organisations, you may require local permission from local authorities in particular. They will have their own local research governance processes to ensure the safety of their service users, and this does tend to vary significantly between local authorities or regions, so it's best to sign up, to contact them to discuss the requirements. Some have signed up to a regional group that has developed general guidance and resources, and will therefore give you a bit more of an easier pathway to gain your local permissions. It's always best to have formal permission from local authorities, and this also includes care homes or other provider organisations where you hope to conduct your research. It's always advisable to have a written agreement with those organisations that they are aware you're conducting your research with their service users and that they have agreed and overseen that the project is appropriate and has all the approvals in place. Many of these organisations will have their own governance forms and processes, so it's best to contact them to see what paperwork you are required to fill out. This open and clear agreement between the organisation and the person conducting the project ensures there's a full understanding of the study requirements and what will be happening within their organisations. And some of them may like to use the NHS Research Passport as a good framework for that agreement. So if you are conducting your research in local authorities, care homes, or other non-NHS provider organisations, do contact the relevant organisation early to know what you need to do and so that they are fully aware of your project and what is required. So to finish, I'd like to thank Nicole Palmer from the University of Kent, who has provided some of the slide content. And also, here are some further information and links to national schemes about how to conduct your research and what approvals you might need. We do hope you found this video interesting and useful. Do share any feedback in the comments, and we look forward to talking to you next time.